Hello friends, Dark Hostess here, and today I'm going to delve into the fringes of reality. Yes, we all grew up watching the Apollo launches and looking at space through NASA's eyes and believing everything they said. But I come to you today to tell you that what they've been telling you has just been a huge hoax. That's right. It might sound quite outlandish to say that we never landed on the moon, but I do believe we did land on the moon. We just didn't land on the moon with the Apollo program. We didn't land on the moon using a rocket. There's so many reasons why we couldn't have made it to the moon with the technology they were using during 1969. The Van Allen belt, those alone, the radiation is so outlandish that no film would ever survive, much less a human being. And I don't know about you guys, but you know, I mean, as technology has rolled on, and as people have went over the footage of the Apollo landings, and a lot of things are falling apart. It's like pulling a thread on a sweater, because it doesn't take long before things start unraveling, and unraveling quite quickly. It just seems to be always one thing after the next. If you start really delving into these into the footage, you know, I mean, it looks great, you know, but do you remember 2001 A Space Odyssey? Yeah, it came out a little bit before the Apollo landings. So, you know, the technology was there to completely fool people. The technology was there to make it look like we were on the moon when we were probably actually just in a studio. Yeah. But like I said, I don't know about you guys, but I don't like being lied to. I don't like my emotions being toyed with. And that's how I felt after learning about the moon landings. Some people will go to their grave, you know, defending the moon landing, saying, we landed on the moon, you know, that's it. But there's so much more to it once you start studying. Once you start reading and looking at the official NASA releases and see the flaws in their own footage. I went almost my entire life believing we went to the moon on the Apollo rockets. I went to the Johnson Space Center and was amazed by all the equipment, and I went to White Sands, New Mexico, and went to their NASA museum there, and it's quite convincing, you know. But think about this. We had rocket technology all the way back to the 40s, and to say that we haven't advanced one iota in all of this time, it seems a little naive to me. What I tell you now is we have a secret space program. We have ships that are so far beyond rockets that they will blow your mind. Back in the 60s, they were already developing this technology. But getting back to the moon and the Apollo landings, I highly recommend watching a film called A Strange Thing Happened on the Way to the Moon. It's quite eye-opening. If you watch that and you still believe we went to the moon, then there's probably not much hope for you. There's also countless videos going over very minute details of all the Apollo landings and showing out the flaws, such as this scene from 2001. And as you see the line there where the screen projected background is, this is what most people believe, and what I believe they use a lot in a lot of the moon footage there. You know, we went to the moon several times, and every time things became a little bit more suspicious, such as bringing the moon lander, and also the strange relationship between Stanley Kubrick, the director of 2001, and NASA. He had people from NASA, of course, consulting on this film, but there seemed to be a lot more going on. I bring to you this picture here as an example. As you can see, that hill in the background just looks very, very odd. But the oddest thing is not that. The oddest thing is that the lander is where the astronaut is. This is from the same mission. And you see, once the lander is landed, there's no moving that thing. The top part ejects off, as you've seen in countless footages, from NASA. And as you can tell, that hill is exactly the same. You can morph the photo back and forth and see there's no difference with that hill. And you can see a very strong line of demarcation there where the back screen is obviously being projected. And like I said, there's countless videos online that will take you through several minute details. There's so many things wrong with the NASA Apollo footage. It would take a lifetime to go through every single detail. From the tire tracks not matching up with the rovers, to the fake backgrounds, to rocks with a letter C written on them, to the actual specs on the vehicles, whose working temperatures are far below what the moon's surface is. The surface of the moon is about 100 Celsius, which equals to about 240 something Fahrenheit. All these things do not add up. The working temperature of the rover alone was well under 100 degrees and way below 100 Celsius. So nothing adds up in so many ways. One of the, as you can see, like in this photo here, the tracks do not add up. Here's the official Lunar Roving Vehicle Operations Handbook. It was published in 1971, year I was born. And as you can see here, the battery on it, the maximum operating temperature limit is 125 Fahrenheit. And it will be completely obliterated by 140. And this is a little test somebody made. One of the astronauts brought a photo to the moon, just a regular photo in a plastic bag. Look what happens when you subject a photo to 100 Celsius.
Yeah, family photograph. And over here we have an oven, and this oven is set to 100 degrees centigrade, and I'm now going to put this photograph in the oven. She's cooking some of my dinner, and then I'm going to watch it through the glass. And that you can see that in very short order trying to get better light, but you'll see it when I open it. This is curling up within seconds. So I think that's a pretty convincing demonstration. And here it is. You can see it there curled up, and that's only at 100 degrees centigrade.
So you can see at a mere 100 Celsius, 200 and something degrees, the normal photograph will curl up and turn black. So towards the end of the Apollo missions, they started to get a little bit sloppier and sloppier. They didn't even try to really explain how they got the rover up there, which wouldn't have fit in the module. They don't try to explain why a footprint on the moon would take a perfect form without any moisture. You see, to make an impression in an imprint like this, you need moisture. If you've ever been to the beach and you've made impressions in the sand with your feet, it's very similar to the properties of the moon. And there's just no way you can make a footprint without a little bit of moisture. So, just little things like this just add up and add up and add up. And they seem to show something very sinister at NASA. They show that they've been lying to us all these years. And there's a lot more going on. All the rockets, all the fireworks, it's just there for entertainment purposes. Public consumption is what they call it. People can take the truth. That's what they realize. That's what they feel. I feel like people could take the truth. Another thing that they came out with just in 2009 was to prove that they had landed on the moon. And what you're looking at right now, this is a satellite image of the moon. Reportedly, this is the lunar module and the rover vehicle. But as you can see, it's a black spot with a little bit of light on top of it. I mean, it's no conclusive proof whatsoever. People have done measurements and have found that the picture here would make the lunar module 4 times larger than it should be. So it doesn't add up whatsoever. And with some of the modern telescopes, they should be able to look at the moon and pick out those pinpoint places and magnify them. There's a reason that the Hubble telescope can't look at the moon. It's just basically too powerful. So the moon's just a little bit too close. And here's an example of what we should have seen on the moon. At the very far corner on the bottom right, this is what we should have seen if we were flying over the moon in that with the same camera specs and everything as that satellite. We should have seen something, and we shouldn't have seen a black dot underneath it, making it that much more easier to Photoshop. Here, from outer space, you can easily make out a car on the road. If you look at the road, the main road here on the left-hand picture, you can see that, we can make out the details. And the car is about a similar size to the lunar module. And it looks a lot different, don't you think? And another thing is, why black and white? It seems that NASA loves black and white, even in this modern day. Why? Because it's easier to hide crap. That's the main reason. Another thing I would like to bring your attention to is the strange behavior of the astronauts once they got back to Earth. Here's Neil Armstrong.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President, Mr. President, members of Congress, fellow astronauts, ladies and gentlemen. Wilbur Wright once noted that the only bird that could talk was the parrot, and he didn't fly very well. So I'll be brief. This week, America has been recalling the Apollo program and reliving the memories of those times in which so many of us here, the colleagues here in the first rows, were immersed. Today we have with us a group of students among America's best. To you, we say, we have only completed a beginning. We leave you much that is undone. There are great ideas undiscovered, breakthroughs available to those who can remove one of truth's protective layers. There are places to go beyond belief. Those challenges are yours. In many fields, not the least of which is space, because there lies human destiny.
It was our pleasure to have participated in one great adventure. It's an adventure that took place not just in the month of July, but rather one that took place in the last decade. We all here and the people listening in today had the opportunity to share that adventure over its developing and unfolding in the past months and years. It's our privilege today to share with you some of the details of that final month of July that was certainly the highlight for the three of us of that decade. We're going to divert a little bit from the format of past press conferences and talk about the things that interested us most, in particular the things that occurred on and about the moon. We will use a number of films and slides which most of you have already seen, and with the intent of pointing out some of the things that we observed on the spot, which may not be obvious to those of you who are looking at them here from the surface of Earth. Our memory of that actually differs little from the reports that you have all heard from those previous Saturn V flights. And
when you first stepped on the moon, did it strike you as you were stepping on a piece of the Earth, or sort of what your inner feelings were, whether you felt you were standing in a desert, or this was really another world, or how you felt at that point?
Well, there was no question in our minds where we were. We've been orbiting around the moon for quite a while.
So, as you can see, there's a lot of strangeness going on with our first astronauts. You know, Neil Armstrong, the first man to allegedly step on the moon, seems completely lost. He seems hypnotized. All of the answers that they give seem to be off the top of their head, like it's the first time they've ever thought about those questions. And it's all very odd. I also might add that it wasn't too long after this press conference here that they all retired. No more space for these guys, and no more movie acting either. Neil Armstrong pretty much stayed to himself. So, bringing all this to light, I highly recommend going through YouTube and looking at the NASA hoax videos and just see for yourself. Just look at the evidence and see how you feel after watching one anomaly after the next. Seeing a scuba diver swimming outside the space station. Things don't always add up with NASA. And you see that, these aren't doctored, images or anything like that. All of the images come directly from NASA. So, if this is just all a toy, smoke and mirror show for everybody, this is just for public consumption, what are we flying? What's the truth? And the truth is, we're way, way beyond rockets, and we have been for quite a while. Something you've probably heard about is the triangular shaped UFOs. This is rare footage of one, the TR-3B Blackbird. This is what they fly in the Air Force now, and which they had a fleet of these guys back in the 90s. They can only give you an idea of what they're at probably now. They're probably so much more advanced because technology advances at an exponential rate. The engine is plasma based, anti-gravity. Yeah, we have that kind of technology. And these things have been known ever since the late 90s, and some people have revealed them even earlier than that. Here's a very interesting professor.
This colonel is a real warrior type guy, and he had a degree in plasma physics. And he was also a consultant to NASA, and he was a consultant to people out at the Palos Verdes nuclear power generating station just 50 miles west of Phoenix. The other thing he said was there was a base on the moon. I find that quite astounding. I mean, I have heard astounding things, not only from this colonel, okay, but also probably the highest rank was a retired 3-star general, lieutenant general in the Air Force. And he knew another guy that I was in contact with, and this other guy claims that he worked 7 years on the U.S. anti-gravity program. I have a fraction of what he told me, and I've got it tape recorded. It's true. Whoa. What a sham the space program is. Because there's another space program going on, a secret space program. And that's what I was attempting to find. In fact, you don't have to go too far to find that there is some secret space programs going on, because they had their own shuttles and their own astronaut crews right out here at Vandenberg Air Force Base, unbeknownst to everybody, and they scuttled a $5 billion facility that was housed there at one time. That was back in the 80s. But the kind of space program he was talking about is using a spacecraft that can leave the bounds of our atmosphere and travel to the planet Mars at 0.8 C. 0.8 the speed of light. And I said, how do you know that? I've been there.
One of these vehicles is the Space Orbital Nuclear Service Intercept Vehicle, SUNSIV. When you hear it from another reliable source in 10 years, you'll remember this. It's codenamed Locust. The SR-74 and the TR-3B flying triangle can deliver spares, replacement units, service fuels, chemicals, and modules to the SUNSIV, or Locust. The robotic SUNSIV uses deliverables to service, calibrate, repair, and replace parts on the newer NSA, CIA, and NRO Ferret satellites. And I know for a fact that they were developing robotic repair of electronics equipment as far back as 81, because I worked a program to where they didn't want.
Now, this scientist, he made this speech all the way back in 1997, if you can believe that. And most people laughed at him. And people have changed their minds considerably with the evidence that is, came through over the past 20, 30 years. I mean, this vehicle has been seen umpteen times, and it's been caught on video numerous times as well. You can just look on YouTube for TR-3B. The only thing that hasn't happened is the government coming out and revealing such technology. I think they're afraid, and think about all that could be done. I mean, we'd have flying cars. We'd probably have endless energy as well. That's what I think they're mainly worried about, is that the energy market will completely collapse. There's also a fabric that you can only cut it with a cold laser, and it can't be cut with a knife. Let's hear a little bit more from this scientist who is speaking.
Who worked for General Dynamics in Fort Worth described a program in which he worked at a plasma accelerator in the mid-60s, researching gravity warping techniques. He is a physicist by education and trade. This was his first top secret program. He described a foil-like material much like that reported discovered after Roswell crash. He described the foil as 12 layers of material less than 10,000ths of an inch thick. It was as flexible as a plastic trash bag, but virtually indestructible to piercing, burning, or cutting, which you've probably all heard before. Here's what you haven't heard. In order to cut the material used for the project, the material was supercooled, a large electrical charge was applied to polarize the molecular structure, and a laser cutter was applied in order to cut this material. Large ribbons of this material were used to reinforce the accelerator, which contained the mercury-based plasma that they started researching in 1965. The plasma was cooled to superconductive temperatures, rotated at 45,000 revolutions per minute, and pressurized at 150,000 atmospheres. This would be considered state-of-the-art technology. He was 200 feet across, the prototype. The Tactical Reconnaissance TR-3B first flight was in the early 90s. The triangular-shaped, nuclear-powered aerospace platform was developed under the top-secret Aurora program. By 1994, there were $3 billion-plus operational models. The operational model is 600 feet across. This flying triangle is not fiction. If you don't believe me, ask the tens of thousands of people who have now spotted one version or another of it, from Belgium to England. Ken can tell you about people that have seen it in England to Arizona. The TR-3B vehicle's outer coating is reactive to electrical radar stimulation and can change reflectiveness, radar absorptiveness, and color. The circular plasma field accelerator ring, called the magnetic field disruptor, surrounds a rotatable crew compartment. It's far ahead of anything you've ever imagined as far as technology. Sandia and Livermore Laboratories developed a reverse engineered MFD, and I believe the government will go at any lengths to protect this technology. The plasma in this accelerator is mercury-based. It's pressurized at 250,000 atmospheres at a temperature of 150 degrees Kelvin, superconductivity, and accelerated to 60,000 revolutions per minute to create a superconductive plasma with a resulting gravity energy. The MFD generates a magnetic vortex field which disrupts and neutralizes the effects of gravity on mass within proximity by 89%. This causes the effect to make the aircraft extremely light and able to outperform any aircraft yet constructed. TR-3B is a high-altitude stealth reconnaissance platform with indefinite loiter time. Once you get it up there at speed, it doesn't take much propulsion to maintain altitude. With the vehicle's mass reduced by 89%, the vehicle can travel at Mach 9 vertically or horizontally. So for those that have had sightings of things making right, and they're not perfect right turns, obviously. Nothing can make a perfect right turn. It's against the laws of physics. But it sure looks like a right turn at a distance.
Can you imagine? This vehicle has the power to go up in the air in a blink of an eye, and it can stay aloft forever. It doesn't need gasoline. Imagine a world where we don't need electricity, you know? I mean, electricity's free, you know, just imagine that. Imagine what could be done with this technology that our government is hiding from us. Imagine all the things they've found on the different planets they've been able to visit with this vehicle. They're hiding a lot from us, and it's all going to come out eventually. Eventually the truth will be revealed. This is Darkosis, and I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I hope I've stimulated your mind some. I highly recommend looking around YouTube and checking out all the various videos about this subject. There's a lot to learn. Take care.